You call that a predator? Enthox clicked its mandibles, nudging the transparent enclosure with a clawed finger. It barely even moves. It looks like a sad, wet leaf. Inside the box, a single bullet ant stood motionless, antennae twitching. The creature was less than 2 inches long, small, unassuming, even dull compared to the vivid colors of the jungle predators catalogued in the interstellar zoology course. The rest of the alien students laughed, or rather, they did whatever counted as laughter for their respective species. Some clicked, some barked, a few made an unsettling throat-gargling noise that presumably expressed amusement. Across the observation room, 18-year-old Leo Patel sipped his coffee without saying a word. He was the only human enrolled in the Xenobiology Exchange program at the prestigious Threxol Institute on Vega 9. The program boasted the finest students from 53 species, engineered minds, psionic brains, and creatures whose entire nervous systems functioned as distributed AI clusters. Leo was a public school graduate from Nebraska. The odds had not been in his favor. But this moment, the bug box moment, this was what he'd been waiting for all semester. Dr. Venka, the six-eyed, slug-like instructor, dripped a glob of mucus onto its lectern and let out a squelch of satisfaction. Now, students, let's not be cruel to young Patel's specimen. I'm sure humans have limited access to truly threatening fauna. Leo's eyes narrowed slightly, not angrily, just curiously, like he was watching someone walk into traffic, too confident to realize they were about to be hit by a speeding truck. I wouldn't poke it if I were you, he said, finally setting his mug down. That's a bullet ant. Enthex scoffed again. Bullet? Like it fires projectiles? Your planet names things as if compensating for weakness. Leo leaned forward, resting his arms on the edge of the table. No bullets, but it feels like you got shot by one. That's why it's named that. This got a few interested blinks. One of the Drithak twins tilted their wide, eyeless head. Shot? Pain scale? Leo shrugged. A 10, maybe 11. Depends if you're the type that screams before or after your body hits the floor. A pause. Then more laughter. Enthex, whose exoskeleton shimmered faintly under the lab lights, reached into the observation box before anyone could stop him. It happened in less than a second. The bullet ant didn't move at first, just rotated, slowly, as if curious about the large, arrogant claw invading its personal space. Then, with a twitch of pure purpose, it climbed up and bit. Number not bit, injected. Enthex made a sound like a can opener having a seizure. His legs flailed, his arms spasmed, his enormous mandibles clamped shut so tightly they cracked one of his lower incisors. He collapsed onto the classroom floor, twitching uncontrollably, and shrieked in his species' high-frequency warble, a sound that shattered 3 screens and set off the emergency vibration warning in half the building. Leo calmly sipped his coffee. Dr. Venka gurgled, horrified. Emergency medical, now! We're losing his primary neural link. Students scrambled. One fainted. 2 others tried to run out and collided with the pressure doors, which were still sealed for safety. Another simply whispered, "The pain. It's psychic." The ant stood proud in its box, antennae swaying like a prize fighter after a knockout round. Leo walked over slowly, removed the container lid, and coaxed the insect back into a small travel tube. He held it up to eye level. "Good job, little buddy." Dr. Venka spun around, mucus visibly foaming. What? What is that creature? What kind of primitive deathworld breeds such unholy monsters? Leo smiled. That? Oh, that's just the kind of thing we find under picnic tables back home. 2 hours later, Enthex was stable, sort of. The medical team had pumped him full of 7 pain suppressants and still couldn't fully nullify the nerve flare. His venom-drenched limb had gone into temporary shutdown, and 2 of his cortical nodes were misfiring like a corrupted drive. Meanwhile, word of the incident had already spread. Leo walked through the halls of the institute in absolute silence, but not because it was quiet. The hallways were filled with students whispering, staring, pulling up images of the earth insect on their holopads. Some even scanned Leo to confirm his species listing again, as if the man in a hoodie with a chipped coffee thermos might secretly be a government weapon. Even the security drones began to hover a little higher when he passed. He wasn't the human who aced the chemical biology module anymore. He was the human who brought a death sentence in a box. That night, his roommate Fricks knocked on the dorm wall with one of his 6 knuckles. Fricks was from Noxiar 3, a semi-aquatic species with transparent skin and a face that looked like a jellyfish trying to learn facial expressions. "You were very calm today." Leo didn't look up from his tablet. "I usually am." "But the ant, you knew what would happen." Leo nodded. "Yep." "Why didn't you stop him?" "I warned him." Fricks blinked slowly, which Leo had learned was the Noxiar equivalent of a shrug. "Was that necessary? Bringing such a creature here?" Leo set the tablet down. "You ever been to Earth, Fricks?" "No." "Then you don't get it. We don't have claws or bioplasma. We don't have bulletproof skin or teleportation glands. What we have is this," he tapped the side of his head, "and the ability to live on a planet that should have killed us off a dozen times before we invented fire." He stood and walked over to the window, looking out over the gardens. "Everything on Earth can hurt you. The sun burns, the wind freezes, the rain floods, the animals bite, the bugs sting. But you know what we do?" Fricks waited. "We survive, and then we tame it, or weaponize it, or put it in a plastic box and take it to school to prove a point." Fricks didn't respond for a long while. Then finally, in a quiet voice, "Do you have more of them?" Leo grinned. "Oh, buddy, I brought the starter pack." By the next morning, the Threxall Institute had issued its first new policy in 15 years. Policy 4.22-A. No student shall introduce or transport live fauna from deathworld-class planets without prior approval from the Interstellar Risk Board, regardless of perceived size or temperament, which, if translated from academic legalese, basically meant no more Earth bugs. The memo was supposed to bring calm. It did the opposite. 3 dormitories were evacuated after a freshman from Zarnak 6 had a panic attack upon spotting a ladybug in an Earth biology textbook. The insect was printed, of course, but the resemblance triggered a full-scale incident involving 8 therapy drones and 1 misplaced fire suppression system. Meanwhile, Leo Patel, Nebraska native, quiet coffee drinker, bug nerd, was being treated like a biohazard in sneakers. He wasn't entirely sure if he liked the attention, but he definitely liked the leverage. "Let me get this straight," said Dr. Uln, the 6-limbed director of Xenodefense Tactics. "You're suggesting we adopt insects as part of the military curriculum?" Leo sat across from the professor's hovering desk, tossing a paperclip in the air. The man never asked for this meeting. The meeting asked for him. "I'm suggesting you consider the psychology of it," Leo replied. "Fear, confusion, unpredictability. You think it's the venom that dropped Enthex. That helped, but it was the unknown that crushed him." Dr. Uln's fronds rustled skeptically. "So you want to scare troops with bugs?" "Not just scare. Train them. Earth bugs are perfect for war scenarios. They're survivors. They don't need orders. They don't give speeches. But they kill, adapt, evolve, fast. That's what makes them terrifying." Uln scoffed. "And you believe that's admirable?" Leo smiled faintly. "I believe the rest of the galaxy underestimates anything that doesn't look like a walking tank, especially when that thing fits in your boot and still drops you in under a second." He stood and nodded toward the door. "But hey, if you don't think they're worth studying, I'll just go back to my dorm and feed my harmless pet ant, who's doing great, by the way." The next day, Leo found a formal request slip in his data inbox. Subject: Proposal: Interspecies Threat Simulation, Formica Bullets. Purpose: Controlled observation of Earth-based insect behavior under high-threat environments. Location: Lab Theta 9, Biodome Sector. Authorization: Dr. Uln, Director, Xenodefense. Leo blinked. Formica Bullets. They gave the bullet ant a codename. It was happening. 2 weeks later, Leo stood in the center of a 50-meter biome dome designed to simulate high-risk terrain. The simulation was supposed to test combat drones against low-profile threats. He'd brought 6 bullet ants, a velvet ant, and one thing labeled only as The wasps. He didn't name them. He wasn't insane. Across the dome, a dozen defense bots armed with stun gel and reactive AI awaited release. The aliens watched from behind the thick glass observation bay. Enthex was present too, arms still twitching occasionally, eyes full of dread. A countdown began. Leo turned to Dr. Ulan and said, "Just remember, you wanted this. 5, 4, 3. Launch threat sequence." The glass dome sealed tight. The floor opened and the insects were released. They scuttled, buzzed, climbed, vanished into crevices. The bots fanned out, weapon lights glowing, sensors flaring. First 30 seconds, nothing. 40 seconds, one bot began vibrating violently and short-circuited. 50 seconds, a red signal flashed, unit down. By the 2-minute mark, 5 bots had collapsed. One had melted part of its own casing in a panic response feedback loop. The wasps, Leo noticed, had not yet been seen, but 3 bots were spinning in circles trying to detect movement that wasn't there. At 4 minutes, one bot launched a full-range sonic burst and exploded. Dr. Ulan stared, stunned. Leo sipped coffee. The simulation ended at 6 minutes. 10 bots down, 0 bugs found. Only faint buzzing remained. "Where are they?" gasped someone behind the glass. Leo grinned. "That's the fun part. You never know." That night, Leo was summoned to speak before the Threxel Strategic Threat Assessment Board. Yes, the board. It had been a long time since any student, let alone a freshman from a deathworld, had ever been requested in front of the high seat. There were 5 of them, a plasma being from Helix 4, a floating spine in a containment field, a fungal hive mind, something that might have once been a tortoise, and a humanoid called Grask with metallic skin and a memory like a black box. Grask did most of the talking. "We've seen the footage," he said flatly. "Your creatures outperform several stealth-class recon units." "They're not mine," Leo replied. "They're just Earthlings, like me, just smaller, meaner." Grask narrowed his eyes. "We are prepared to fund a full research initiative into biological warfare utilizing Class 1 deathworld fauna, but we require assurance of containment, no loose assets." Leo crossed his arms. "Only if I'm the one running it." The room stirred. "You propose leading it yourself?" "I brought them. I can handle them. But if you want to use them, then humans are in charge. Non-negotiable." There was a long, slow silence. Finally, the fungal voice spoke, vibrating through the air like rotting cello strings. "Agreed." Back at the dorm, Fricks watched Leo enter with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "So, how did it go?" Leo grinned. "I have a lab now, and apparently a defense budget." Fricks blinked rapidly. "For your bugs?" Leo pulled out a laminated badge. "Leo Patel, Director, Earth Fauna Operations." He tossed it onto his bed and flopped down beside it. "Fricks," he said, "you haven't seen anything yet." "So, these insects," said Admiral Kotun, squinting at the writhing hollow footage on the screen. "They don't respond to commands. They don't operate in units. They don't even follow pack hierarchy. And yet," he pointed with a clawed digit as a swarm of bullet ants dismantled a scout drone in real time, "they coordinate." Leo Patel, now in a lab coat he clearly didn't earn through traditional channels, nodded calmly. "Correct," Kotun scoffed. "That's absurd. Coordination requires communication, signals, instincts." "They have all of that," Leo replied, "just not in ways you understand. They use pheromones, vibrations, environmental cues. Think of it as organic Wi-Fi." The Admiral made a noise like he was about to cough up a nail. "So you're telling me these creatures are intelligent?" Leo shrugged. "Define intelligence. They don't write poetry, but they survive, adapt, and optimize. That's smarter than half the war councils I've seen." Behind Leo, his new assistant, a pale insectoid alien named Clerix, whispered, "He means that literally, Admiral. He's reviewed 28 Galactic conflict archives this week alone." Kotun stood slowly. "So, what now, Human Director?" Leo leaned back, crossed his arms. "Now we train your soldiers to fear the grass." The interspecies urban combat simulation facility, or as Leo affectionately renamed it, the Bug Box, was constructed in just under 3 galactic weeks, which was record time, especially for something built entirely from panic. At its core was a sprawling artificial Earth jungle, humid, unpredictable, teeming with concealed motion. A few trees were real, most weren't, but all served one purpose: hide the bugs, release the fear. Leo stood on the balcony above, holding a thermos. Release unit, fire ant, set threat level to mildly annoyed. Cleric's eyes twitched. "Sir, are you sure about that setting? Last time, mildly annoyed, almost led to—" Leo sipped. "I'm aware." Below, 3 elite trainees, 1 reptilian, 1 avian, 1 armored fungal mass, entered the training zone. They moved like professionals, cautious, coordinated, scanning every inch. And then came the screaming. Tiny, red, vengeful fire ants exploded from under a fake log and swarmed the fungal soldier. The reptilian tried to assist, then slipped on a sudden flood of ants emerging from his own boot. The avian bolted, but tripped a trap of wasps disguised as leaves. It took 12 med drones to evacuate the group. Leo marked something on his datapad. Well, that answers the camouflage test question. By the 3rd round of trials, word had spread beyond the Academy. High Command had received over 120 direct requests from allied species to evaluate the viability of Earth-based bio-units. Some were curious, some were terrified. All were now calling Leo Commander Bug. He hated it. Clerics, on the other hand, printed it on T-shirts. Things escalated when the Growltor Empire, former enemies of Earth and still arrogant in their dismissiveness of anything human, insisted on a public test. "I want to see this Earth horror," said General Vaughn, an 11-foot war beast who resembled a walking blender full of steak knives. "If your tiny terrors are so mighty, let them face me." Leo blinked. "You're serious?" "I'll enter your training field unarmed, alone. If I fall, I'll admit Earth's strength." Leo looked at Clerics. Clerics looked at Leo. Then Leo grinned. "Deal." The event was broadcast live to 12.7 billion viewers. General Vaughn entered the jungle simulation shirtless, sneering at the camera drones. "I am Vaughn the Razor, slayer of fleets, crusher of bone." He stomped forward. "Come, Earth, send your crawling nightmares." And that was when the velvet ant stung him. He froze mid-speech, his legs locked, his back arched. His roar was replaced by a high-pitched screech only dogs and terrified interns could hear. 2 seconds later, he collapsed. 1 second after that, he begged for morphine in 6 languages. The broadcast cut out. Leo casually posted a clip online titled, "Velvet Ant vs. Vaughn, Who Will Win?" It broke the galactic internet. 3 days later, the Emperor of Zorthax 9 sent a message. Not a formal dispatch, not a treaty, a message. "Dear Earth, we were wrong. Please teach us your ways. Also, how do we keep these things out of our plumbing?" Leo was reading it while holding a jar labeled, "Australian Trapdoor Spider, Do Not Shake." He shook it. "Clerics," he said, "we might need a bigger facility." And so it began, the Swarm Protocol. Earth's smallest creatures became the galaxy's newest weapons, but not bombs, not guns, symbols. They were nature's version of special forces. No armor, no lasers, no diplomacy, just pain, precision, and patience. Entire training regimes were restructured. Engineers began studying insect-inspired tactics. One alien species declared the ant an honorary citizen, and Leo received an honorary doctorate in interplanetary threat psychology. "Which is dumb," he said. "I'm still failing astrochemistry." But not everyone was amused. Deep within the neutral territories, in the rusted shadows of dead fleets, a new broadcast was forming. A voice spoke in hushed tones. "They've begun weaponizing the dirt dwellers, the ants, the crawlers, the sting beasts. We must adapt, or we fall. Begin. Operation Pest Control." Back on Threxal 9, Leo squinted at his jar. "Clerics, remind me to patent an anti-extermination drone." "Already did," said Clerics. "Also make coffee." "Working on it, Commander Bug." "Don't call me that." "Never stopping." "Operation Pest Control has begun," hissed the voice through the encrypted Galactic broadcast. And with that ominous declaration, half the species in the core systems decided they had seen enough of Earth's adorable little insects stinging generals into speechless seizures or nesting inside fusion cannons. They wanted order restored, clean hallways, quiet fields, no more waking up to find ants in the coffee machine on a military ship. Their plan: eliminate all Earth-originated insects, regardless of how many treaties they violated to do it. That very morning, 17 extermination fleets were dispatched to containment zones. 20 more would follow by week's end. One of them, the Zarnathi hive cruiser Sanitizer Rex, was the first to arrive, and the first to regret everything. "Status report," barked Fleet Commander Grohl, standing tall over his bridge. "Zone lockdown initiated," said his subordinate. "Target, Earth-controlled biome colony. Coordinates, grid Gamma F. On the screen, jungle. Mist, swarming life, no humans in sight." "Deploy fire," Grohl ordered. "Scorch it." High above the atmosphere, the cruiser's underside opened. A payload of anti-biothermite pods dropped from orbit. 5 seconds passed. Then the clouds reversed course. Literally, the pods never landed. Something launched them back up into the cruiser's belly. The entire crew stared in silence as their screens lit up in red. Their own payloads had returned, with ants riding the flames like it was a roller coaster built in hell. Then came the impact. Leo sipped from a new mug that said, "I heart pain insects." Behind him, clerics updated the tally board. Fleet casualties, 17. Insect casualties, 2, 1 by accident, 1 retired. "Commander Bug," clerics said, "someone just tried to bio-wash the test grounds with industrial-grade acid." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Did it work?" "They dissolved their own drone fleet and accidentally mutated a centipede into a minor deity." Leo blinked. "Well, note to self, centipedes thrive in acid. That's upsetting." He turned to the console. "Patch me through to Galactic Defense Advisory." Clerics complied. "Leo here," he began. "Can someone please tell the galaxy to stop attacking things they don't understand?" Silence. Then static. Then a single voice. "Negative, Commander. The war has begun." Leo sighed. Of course it has. By week's end, Earth's microfauna had been declared a Class 5 strategic threat, which was impressive, considering the only other thing on that list was a black hole armed with a cult following. To counter, Leo initiated Project Home Turf. They built a biodome on Grell Station 4, loaded with over 300 species of Earth's most infuriating critters: fleas, ticks, hornets, mosquitoes, the kind that hum in your ear but vanish when you swat, and the infamous bullet ant. The grand opening was publicized as an educational tour. Aliens flocked in. They left traumatized. One Zergan diplomat broke down after being buzzed near the ear by a horsefly. "I heard its wings," he wept. "Its wings said my name." In a secret underground facility far from Earth, General Vaughn, still limping from his velvet ant sting, reunited with fellow warlords. "This cannot stand," he growled, fist pounding a steel table. "Agreed," hissed a shadowy figure. "These humans, they are mad." "Worse," said another. "They're proud of it." They devised a plan, a last resort. They called it the Purge Light, a weapon designed to target Earth DNA signatures across planetary surfaces. It wasn't legal, it wasn't moral, but it was efficient. They would purge all known insect samples of Earth origin. And if some humans got caught in the blast, collateral. Clerics interrupted Leo mid-shower with a datapad. "You need to see this." Leo, towel around waist, dripping on the floor, stared at the hologram of the device. "That's a war crime generator." "Yes." "And they're aiming it at the jungle dome." "Yes." "Cool, cool," Leo muttered, reaching for his emergency pants. "Why are you smiling?" clerics asked. "Because they forgot the cardinal rule." "Which is?" Leo zipped his coat and grabbed a pack. "Never pick a fight with creatures that survive extinction-level events without even noticing." Operation Purge Light commenced at dawn. 3 megabeams lanced down from orbit, bathing the dome in pure sterilization force. Sensors exploded with readings. Entire sections of the facility vanished in white light. Commanders celebrated. Finally, someone said, peace returns. Then came the scratching. It started on the outer hulls, software rhythmic. By the time they realized what it was, chewing, it was too late. Ants. Ants had tunneled into orbit. They chewed through alloy, nested in engines, laid eggs in launch tubes. One admiral was swallowed whole by an ant swarm that spelled the word "nice try" on his body cam. The galaxy screamed. Earth's insects had gone orbital. Victory? Clerics asked. Leo grinned. Number lesson. Clerics tilted his head. Explain. We didn't send ants to conquer. We sent ants to teach. The galaxy didn't respect Earth's ecosystem. Now they worship it. He gestured toward the alien leaders gathered outside the UN insect dome. They had arrived with gifts, offerings, notebooks, pleas for training. One even carried a golden ant idol. Leo stepped outside. Welcome, he said, to your first class in Terran micro-tactical survival. Please take a seat, if it doesn't have fire ants on it. Everyone froze. Nobody sat. They called it the Insect Accord, signed in trembling ink, with 2 pen malfunctions due to nearby wasps. The document officially recognized Terran insects, not as fauna, but as a sovereign tactical force. It granted them a level of diplomatic immunity usually reserved for nuclear stockpiles and planetary gods. And yes, it was signed after 3 more alien delegates got sent to medical for sitting too close to the humming mound. The galaxy had learned the hard way. Earth didn't just survive because of intelligence or technology. Sometimes we survived because we had bugs that didn't care what galaxy you were from. They just wanted to ruin your day. Leo stood on the raised stage of the Insect Education and Research Pavilion, which was, in fact, a former Galactic Tribunal Hall, now converted into what clerics called the Bug Cathedral. A massive carved statue of a bullet ant loomed above the stage. Real ants crawled over it freely. Alien children filed in, their eyes wide, their voices hushed. They had come to learn. Leo cleared his throat. I know many of you fear what you don't understand, so let's change that. He held up a clear case. Inside was a single insect, small, ordinary-looking. It was the bullet ant. This, he said, is not your enemy. The audience leaned in. This is your teacher. Among the crowd, a Zarnathi senator leaned toward a young aide. Why is this man giving lectures about bugs? Why not just exterminate them? The aide didn't answer. He was busy clutching his arm, red, swollen, pulsing. The senator looked closer. Oh no. The aide whispered. I leaned against the wrong bench. He collapsed into twitching enlightenment. 2 nurses, both human, rushed in with a mild sedative and an emotional support possum. Elsewhere, a documentary began filming. Stings and Survival, How Earth's Insects Made the Galaxy Rethink Evolution, narrated by clerics. It began as a joke, he said over footage of Leo pouring honey into a wasp trap. But jokes in human culture are often where the truth is hiding. Cut to Space Marines refusing to step on an anthill. Cut to an insect nursery guarded by armed drones. Cut to a memorial for Fleet Admiral Crockett, who once said, "What's the worst a bug can do?" In a high orbit, far above the chaos, General Vaughn awoke from a fever dream. He saw ants. So many ants. He wept, not out of pain, out of clarity. He rose, climbed to the observation deck, and pressed his hand to the glass. "Forgive me," he whispered. Then he radioed the fleet. "All units, retreat. The war is over. They won." "Who won, sir?" asked the confused operator. "The ants," he said, voice hollow, "and the humans who serve them." Back on Earth, Leo and clerics shared coffee outside the UN biodome. "So," clerics asked. "What now?" Leo thought. Took a slow sip. "Now we build a school." Clerics blinked. "Another one?" Leo nodded. "Not for insects this time, for diplomats." "Why?" "Because next time someone laughs at a creature from Earth," Leo said, "I want the ambassador to smile and hand them a pamphlet called Why You're Already Dead." 1 year later. The Galactic Council reconvened. The new representative from Earth walked in, flanked by tiny chrome-armored ants riding on his shoulders. The chamber went silent. He reached the podium and said nothing. He simply set down a jar. Inside, a bullet ant. The jar read, "Hello again." Delegates stood. They did not vote. They did not argue. They clapped. The galaxy never truly recovered. Instead, it adapted. Alien empires redesigned armor to cover gaps vulnerable to bee stings. Ship airlocks were fitted with micro-mesh barriers, and political debates were shortened dramatically if someone casually mentioned fire ants on the seat. Earth's microfauna had done the unthinkable. They had colonized not planets, not sectors, but respect. And in a universe where size usually dictated fear, it was the smallest things that made the loudest statement. Leo returned to his cabin one evening and found clerics leaving a bowl of sugar on the windowsill. "For the ants," he said. Leo smiled. "No one wants war with neighbors who saved your species by ruining everyone else's day." Clerics raised his glass. "To the ants." Leo raised his. "To the galaxy's most polite new religion." They clinked, and from the distance, just barely audible, a faint buzzing, and the sound of someone whispering, "Ow, my soul."